Hello, welcome to the Spring Social, hosted by Veselka and Steve Vaccaro Law. Yeah, give him a hand. Actually, you guys, has anybody ever been to this place before? It's pretty cool, right? Ukrainian National Home. Yeah. And I don't know if you guys know the band, a little tidbit. I don't know if you guys know the band New Order. There's actually, go to YouTube, you can see the footage of them playing here in 1981, which is pretty cool in New York history. Yeah. There are some things that make our city great, and oftentimes it's small businesses. People don't, I'm sorry, this may be insulting to some people, but people don't move to New York to go to Dunkin' Donuts or whatever these chain places. It's the family businesses that are so important. And it's reflected by how generous they are to the community. And I'd like to thank Veselka, Tom Bouchard, and Jason Bouchard, father and son, who have offered this wonderful food tonight. And then alongside that, Veselka Racing, with Harry Zernicki and Etsu and Misha as well, and with his team. And then, of course, I hope they're here, NYC Velo, which is a great bike shop just down the street. Please check them out if you have never done that. And of course, a legend in the bicycle community and beyond, all over the world, James Mullery on the decks. All right, so I just want to say a little something about Steve Vaccaro. You guys, many people do know him, but maybe you don't know a lot of the things about Steve Vaccaro. First off, from my perspective, I've been traveling the world. I've been very fortunate to be involved in the bicycle community for probably 35 years now. Been active in different organizations and so on. I travel the whole world. All my life is dedicated to the bicycle community. So I get to meet incredible people working very hard for cyclist rights, for cycling in general, and all its different myriads of forms, from sports to activism to advocacy and all these things. So I haven't really met too many people that work harder for us than Steve Vaccaro. Yeah, let's give him a hand. He's leading rides on Saturdays or on the weekends. He's leading rides for the New York Cycling Club. You guys probably have enjoyed these rides. He's on the board of Transportation Alternatives. He's on the board of Bike New York. He's co-founded Streets Pack, which is, basically if you're gonna run for mayor, you probably should go and meet with them and see, he's going to tell you what we need to the next mayor. Also, he's helped write legislation. And also, he's served so many cyclists and pedestrians in New Jersey and New York City. And some of us are here. So anyhow, I just wanted to introduce him with that little speech to Steve Vaccaro. Let's hear from him now. Thank you, Steve Vaccaro.
Yeah, let's hear it for Brendt and the Bicycle Film Festival, which has been a mainstay of our cycling community in New York City and worldwide for all those decades. Thank you, Brendt. Thanks so much for coming, and I gotta give another shout out to Jason, Burchard, and Veselka Restaurant, the staff here who's serving us this amazing food. We could not have had this event without their generous, sponsorship and decision to donate all of the food and beverages here that we're enjoying. And if you were looking for the pierogi, they're coming after I'm done talking. So I'll try to keep it quick, okay? I'll try to keep it quick. It is such a great feeling to be here in this room, to see all of you, who I know in so many different ways, to see a riding buddy I've probably spent about 10,000 miles with on the road, right over there, Mike. To have so many of my riding buddies, my fellow NYCC club members, to see fellow board and advisory council members from Transportation Alternatives, from Bike New York, and to see so many current and former clients and connect with them. you know, I'm just like, I'm speechless, but also this is exactly what I wanted. And then, what about today's weather? Are you ready to ride this year? Is 2025 going to be a good season? Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I have to tell you, I really wanted to ride all the way through the winter, and I say that to myself every time around Thanksgiving. I'm like, I'm going to do it, and I come up with a ride series, and it has a name, and I have the routes, and I post the rides, and this year was just too cold, so I did not get to ride as much as I wanted to, you know, my body told me so. It's telling me so right now, but you know, we're like bears, right? And you put on a little bit over the winter, and then, you know, things change. The weather comes out, the sun comes out, you're there with your friends, and you're out riding, and it's just another great season. So I'm so glad to be here with everything and everyone cooperating. Let's just go to a quick overview of what I'm going to be talking about. Thanks a lot. I'm changing it up. The title of tonight's talk was Your Ride, Your Rights. I'm going to start with your rights because people told me that's what they were most interested in. I'm going to quickly go through some things about what to do when you're in a crash, how to avoid a crash, and how to plan for what I'm sorry to say is probably the inevitable crash you'll have as a cyclist, so that it doesn't affect you in ways that go beyond your physical injuries, right? And mainly that has to do with insurance. I'm going to talk a bit about bike law, but you know, that's going to be quick because the laws are evolving and changing, and I just want to make a plea to all of you to get involved with your cycling organizations that are working so hard to change the laws, to make New York City a more bikeable city. And there's so much work that's been done and so much left to be done. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of these like really big themes. You know, it takes a lot of chutzpah to say I'm going to address these themes, but I think that they're right at the core of one's bike life. You know, we all have a bike life, and these are the issues and factors that motivate us and we need to be aware of. Freedom, power, responsibility, community. A little bit to talk about what that means, and then I do have some comments I want to make about the commercial delivery cyclist situation in New York City, because by and large, the commercial delivery cyclists, the 60 to 80,000 of them that we have here in New York City are not here tonight. They're part of our community, but they're not, right? They should be more a part of our community, and I have some thoughts I wanted to share about commercial delivery cycling and how we have to kind of bring them in and knit them into our bike community here in New York. So let's just talk a little bit about what to do in a crash, okay? I'm very fond of saying that, and I'm gonna have my timer here to make sure that we don't go over. Biking is the ultimate urban transportation hack, right? You get on your bike and you don't have to worry about buying a car, renting a car, buying car insurance, car repairs, car gas, car parking, car tickets. Like, if you're in a car in New York City, you're just out there waiting for people to take money from you, right? But if you've got the bike, not only do you not have to deal with any of that, you know, you don't even have to wait in line most of the time, because the bottom line is that you just take up a very small amount of space, you're nimble, and if there's just even a sliver of space that's set aside for bikes, or that maybe is neglected and not being used by other street users, you've got your lane, you've got your space, and it's just a great place to be, especially in a city like New York. And the problem that comes up with crashes is that once you get in a crash, everything changes. All of a sudden, there's an NYPD bureaucracy. There's an insurance bureaucracy. There's a medical bureaucracy that you have to deal with. There's a legal bureaucracy if you're looking for a lawyer to represent you. And you know, it just becomes like a mess and a disaster. And it's the reason why so many people, I think, just don't want to deal with it, right? They just walk away. You know, you talk about fleeing the scene, which is a big problem with drivers who hit cyclists and they flee the scene, but cyclist crash victims will flee the scene And there are many factors behind that. One is that there is, this chemical cascade when you sustain trauma. There's endorphins, adrenaline, and all sorts of other things that come into play that make you want to just get out of it. Fight or flight, and usually it's flight. And cyclists will be badly injured and will leave the scene because they just want to get out of that situation and go to the place where they know there will be people who care about them. And so many people come to me who've done that, and because they escaped from the scene as their natural instincts, their animal instincts told them to do, they lost their rights. So it's very important at the scene of a crash, and it's written over all the materials I've been giving out here tonight, to find out the identity of who hit you, or at least the purported license plate on the vehicle, if there is one. And this is all kind of becoming more difficult since the pandemic. We have vehicles without license plates, we have vehicles with fake temporary tags, we have people who flee the scene more often, people who don't have insurance, but you want to try to get the information of who it was who hit you so that they can be held responsible. But even before that, in terms of taking care of yourself, you need to understand that here in New York, we have a good system that provides $50,000 worth of medical coverage for you if you're in a crash. It will cover any ER charge, any ambulance charge. It will cover most of your surgery, okay? Or all of it, likely. Do not refuse medical attention at the scene of a crash unless you are sure you're fine. I cannot emphasize that message enough. But while you're having this fight or flight experience, you want to run away. So what I'll say is, not just take care of yourself, because what I'm telling you now, it'll go out of your head. It's happened to me in a crash. I've been in crashes, and it feels like some kind of science fiction movie, where there's some kind of alien mind control, like compelling me to run away from the scene, even though I do this for a living. You can't run from the scene. You've got to stay there and see it through. And if you are the person who comes upon the crash victim, you can help them. You can explain this to them. You can gather the information from the driver. You can take photographs, not just of the license plate and of the driver's face or a copy of their driver's license, but also of the whole scene. Where's the bike? Where's the car? Oftentimes, the placement of the car, the bike, and everything else at the scene following a crash is absolutely critical evidence that tells the story about who was at fault. So take whole scene pictures, as well as gathering the necessary information. You can't rely on the police to do it. Save that information, and then make sure that you have the contact information for that person. Not just that you give it to them, but get it back from them so that you can make sure to share with them the information that they're going to need to protect their rights. The other thing about being in a crash is that, a lot of people, especially in New York, I don't want to go to an ER and I can walk, yeah, my arm, my wrist, whatever, but I'm going to be okay. And who wants to sit in an ER for 12 or 30 hours? I just want to tell you a story. My partner, Edith, who's here tonight, she was in a crash just a couple of months ago, and it was with another cyclist, right? She gathered the information, but she didn't go and get medical attention. And what she found is that nowadays, if you want to go, medicine is so specialized. There's a head guy, and there's the shoulder woman, and there's the finger person, and there's all these different specialists. You're on the phone trying to set up appointments with all of these different specialists on an outpatient basis. If you just let go and say, okay, I'm taking the ambulance trip to the hospital, all of those specialists are there. And at the hospital, they will know that the no-fault system here in New York will pay for all of your medical bills. No co-payments, no deductibles, 100%, because here in New York, it's not true in other states. Here in New York, we understand and know that the harm to cyclists on our streets are caused by motorists, and it's the motorist who has to pay for these medical expenses on a no-fault basis, regardless of who is at fault. So please, unless you're sure you're fine, take that ambulance trip. Don't refuse a trip to the hospital. And there'll be a chance for Q&A at the end, so I'm just going to try to get through this quickly. You know, I want to talk a little bit now after, you know, what you do when you're in a crash is how to anticipate crashes and possibly avoid them. So I'll ask James to cue video 1. The most common crash scenario in New York City is dooring, because the spaces in which we ride are these interstitial spaces, and we're going to video 1. And this is an absolutely terrible and tragic video, but I'll just ask you to watch this. Yeah. This is Aaron Padway, and his father, who's my client, and the administrator of the state, has given me permission to use this video. And, you know, you saw what happened here. If you were riding in that part of the roadway where an opening door from either the parking lane or the traffic lane might open into you, you really don't know what's going to happen. Most doorings are not that serious. Most doorings involve bumps, bruises, scrapes, lacerations, maybe a broken bone, not a fatal crash like a second strike dooring as the type that you saw there in that video. You should not ride in the dooring zone at faster than 7 or at the most 10 miles an hour. Just don't do it. Okay, unless you're absolutely sure that it's a line of cars that are queued up at a red light and you're filtering up. Even then, it's 7 to 10 miles an hour, because if you get doored, you're not going to be able to stop, and you don't know where that door is going to send you. So I can just say, dooring, #1 most common way to get hurt. There is no safe way to proceed through the dooring zone except at about 7 miles an hour, and just accept it. Ring your bell as you're going through the dooring zone for a little extra protection. Look in the cars as you pass by them, or call out, or do something. But dooring is the most common way for cyclists to get injured. So that's one way to avoid a crash, is to be aware of that dooring hazard. James, could you play the second video? This video involves a right hook with a 14-year-old cyclist. That's number 3. We go back to number 2. And I want you to play it one more time, James, and if you could stop it when I ask you to stop it. This is Mario Valenzuela. Look where that truck is. Stop. If you notice, the truck had pulled way out to the left, so big trucks swing out left, preparatory to turning right, because that way they can make the turn faster. If that truck had stayed in the right lane, it would have been more apparent, potentially, to the cyclist that the truck might be turning. This truck happened to have a malfunctioning turning signal. It didn't work, as police later found in the investigation, so there was no signal for the cyclist to see. But the truck was way out over the double yellow because he wanted to take the turn fast. So you may think, oh, that truck's way over there, it's not going to hit me. You really have to be careful with trucks. And the police detective who investigated this case for the New York City Collision Investigation Squad, his opinion was this was 100% the cyclist's fault. Because the cyclist rode into a turning truck. And when I questioned that detective under oath, like, how can you say that that truck driver did it right? He was swinging way out over the double yellow, and now he hooks in and makes a right turn, and you admit you were the one who found that he didn't have a proper turn signal? He's just like, the cyclist hit the truck. That's the police mentality. This was unfortunately also a fatal crash, and Mario's family gave us permission to use this, but this is what happens out on the street. So if you see a truck, don't assume because they're far away from you, they're not going to hook right into you. Can you cue 3, please, James? There's a bunch of cyclists road cycling in Rockland County, Could you do that one more time? Forget this one, not 4, but 3. She's waiting in the silver car. She's waiting. She sees the cyclist. Do you know what the story is here? The one in the white car is her daughter. They were rendezvousing to meet at this business in the parking lot. The daughter waved her mother into the path of the cyclist. They were acting like they were in a parking lot or in a driveway and not on a public roadway. I mean, this was not a fatal crash, but this demonstrates how a motorist can yield to 5 or 6 or 7 cyclists first and then make a turn right in front of them, and then you have to choose. Am I going to eat their windshield or am I going to go to ground? And that's the decisions that we face when we're out there riding. So be aware that drivers, even if they yield to other cyclists and seem to see them, they may not see you. They may be distracted by this kind of nonsense of mother and daughter. Oh, go ahead, Mom, good to see you. Yeah. Can you show number 4? This is the last video. I'm going to show you, this is an intentional strike. This is a cyclist in Brooklyn. Yeah. There had been a prior interaction between the cyclist and the motorist. The motorist tried to cut the cyclist off and turn at the prior intersection. The motorist wanted to turn left at an earlier intersection, but was angry at the cyclist for not yielding to the motorist who wanted to turn left across the bike lane. So the motorist decided, oh no, I'm going to catch up. And you can see him gesturing in his car, and if we were playing the audio, you'd hear what he was yelling out the window.
Do you want to hear the audio? We have it.
Sure, go ahead. Mainly you heard the cyclist who was wearing a helmet on their camera, and they have this evidence of what happened. My colleague Chris Green, who's here tonight, went to the police department with the cyclist, and the police were just like, this is a traffic crash. What do you mean this is an assault? The police didn't want to hear anything about it. We've had a rash of intentional strikes here in New York City over the last year. And our firm has been taking these up more or less on a pro bono basis because likely there's no compensation to be gotten from a driver like this. They don't have insurance. Even if they do have insurance, it doesn't apply to an intentional act like this one shown in the video. The police won't do anything. We're begging and pleading with the Kings County DA's office to do something about it. Nothing has been done so far, and we have lots of cases like this. This is what we're facing out there. All I can say about intentional strikes is that the most common way I've seen people injured from intentional strikes is when they do this to a driver, especially when they're in front of them. Don't do that. It may feel satisfying, but it is the most common way to provoke an intentional strike from behind to give a finger to the driver. So let's talk a little bit about bike law. Back to slide 2. It's complicated. I'm not going to be able to explain all of it to you. And this is something that I put together just to explain that there are 3 different sources of bike law in New York. There's city law, there's state law, there's statutory law, there's administrative law. There are so many different sources of law that I had to create this decision tree about telling you where to go to even look up where the applicable rule is. Cyclists are pedestrians, sometimes they're motorists, others jurisdictionally. There's a difference between New York City to New York State. New Jersey is totally different, where I also practice, and the rules change as soon as you go over the GW Bridge or you go into Westchester or into Nassau. So I'm not going to try to explain all of this to you. I'm just going to tell you, you need to use your common sense. You need to be vigilant and have situational awareness and know everything that's going on around you all the time. and to have an escape route, an escape plan available to you in any traffic situation, and be adapting your escape plan as you're riding. Now, of course, if you're riding with others, you are much safer, which is why I love riding with the New York Cycle Club. People here are members of various different bike clubs, or just go out riding together informally. It is the best way to stay safe. Ride on streets with bike lanes. There are other cyclists you'll find there, so if you get hit, they can help you the way I'm asking you to help those other cyclists who get hit, okay? We need to take care of each other and pull together as a bike community to protect ourselves against the kind of harm that happens all too often to cyclists in New York City. I want to put on my glasses, go back to my outline, and try to finish up here with some further remarks I wanted to talk about. So the police. Don't expect that the police know what the applicable laws are for bikes. They don't. I know from having litigated against the police for over 20 years that the only training police get in traffic law is what they did to get a driver's license. You show up at the police academy, you have a driver's license, there is no instruction in traffic law, especially not as pertains to bikes, unless you have some kind of specialized obligation once you leave the academy and get assigned to some kind of special traffic duty. Police do not know about bike law. I've had cases of police going to dedicated bike paths and writing tickets to cyclists. It happened in Central Park on the 96th Street transverse, the shared bike pedestrian pathway that we helped win and get put in there, because the police just didn't know. They don't know, and no one is telling them that they care. So you can get ticketed for anything by the police, for being on the wrong side of the street. You can get ticketed for not wearing a helmet, even though you're not required to wear one. You can get ticketed for riding on a designated bike path with signage with the cop standing in front of the sign. You can get ticketed for anything, and all I can say is that our firm is here for the community of cyclists here in New York City. And if you get ticketed, if you're in a crash, you can call us up, and there's not going to be a meter running. We are here to try to give helpful advice to anyone who's injured, ticketed, or otherwise harmed while they're on a bike unfairly, and we can help you. We can't do it limitlessly or endlessly, but I see here in this room a number of people who we've given advice to over the years. It might just be 5 or 10 minutes, but how to deal with the ticket and how to deal with the police. The evolving bike laws in New York. I mean, it's been my honor and really my mission to try to get the laws changed to better reflect the way bikes, cars, and pedestrians interact in New York City. One of the things I'm most proud of is when, through Streets PAC, the Political Action Committee, we founded back in 2013 to represent cyclist interests, worked with Carlos Menchaca, then a city council member in Sunset Heights in Brooklyn, to get enacted a cyclist Head Start rule that said cyclists can follow the pedestrian crossing signal. Cyclists can go with the white pedestrian walking figure even if there is a red round vehicular signal. And we were thrilled that Carlos wanted to partner with us on this and that he got it through the city council and we won it into law. And then we were surprised to find that the Department of Motor Vehicles and the NYPD were never informed of the change in law. And so they just kept ticketing cyclists who were following the white pedestrian crossing signal, as they now could starting in December of 2019, because no one sent out a memo saying, hey, there's been a change in the law. And since then, we have been representing cyclists here in New York City who get ticketed on a pro bono basis to try to get the memo sent out. And I think we've actually done it at the DMV. I've heard some news that maybe the DMV judges got a memo, the NYPD still has not. So if that happens to you, let us know, because you know, what I've learned as a lawyer is like you can organize, you can draft a law, you can enact a law, win passage of the law, and that's just the start of the process in getting the law changed. It will go on for years, I'm sure, before it's recognized that cyclists can follow a pedestrian crossing signal. There are other works that are being shepherded by people right here in this room to get what's called an Idaho stop, which is just treat a stoplight as a stop sign, a momentary stop, and be able to go through. There's support for these in the state legislature. It's passed one house in the New York, the Senate. We're going to keep trying until we get it. We're changing the law, so know what the laws are, but most importantly, have situational awareness. And keep yourself safe. I wanted to go now to some of these issues about biking, your ride. So we go back to slide 2. You know, bikes, freedom and power, and I just wanted to put this up, and I hope you don't think this is like too vain of me. Go to the slide, James. I think it's next one, 4. Yeah, this is like my personal heat map. Like, this is why I love biking, right? It's because my range, you know, I go out every weekend I can with my riding mates from the New York Cycle Club. We have billions and billions of dollars that we have sunk into our roadways. They are not just for transportation. They're also for recreation, for fitness, and for connecting with all of these different communities surrounding New York, whether it's up in the Catskills, it's in the Berkshires, it's down by Philadelphia. I lead rides to these locations every year, and this is what it's all about. This is like the life force in me comes from riding with my friends to these places. And I just invite everyone here in this room to think about expanding their bike life, not just commuting, not just racing, not just ordinary errands, utility cycling, not just with your family, club cycling, road cycling, international touring. I couldn't even fit on the map the trips that I've taken to South Africa, Colombia, Taiwan. There are so many places best discovered on a bicycle, and I just want to urge all of you, expand, enrich your bike life, because those roads were not built for cars, they were built for us. And we should be out there on those roads, expanding our bike life as far as we can. But with freedom comes responsibility. With freedom and power comes responsibility, as Spider-Man taught us, right? So you gotta be careful, and you gotta think about the other people in traffic. You have to consider that when you're out and there's pedestrians around, pedestrians are not buying into the constant vigilance that we need to maintain as cyclists in order to be safe. They may be lost deep in thought and going out for a walk to work things out, or looking at their phone, or doing whatever else they may be doing. They did not buy into a requirement of constant vigilance. And because we are faster than them and more nimble, we have to keep an eye out for them. All the more so motorists. So it depends on mode, and it depends on context what we do with that freedom. We have to make sure not to hurt other people by exercising some degree of defensive anticipation for when conflicts are going to occur and to avoid them. And that's an obligation that we all have moving around in this dense city. I want to just go on a last point to on freedom. I'm going to ask everyone here, and I don't know if this is going to work from up here, but I'm going to try it with my phone. Freedom means different things in different contexts. And if you put your phone up to this, you're going to find yourself directed to a website for an organization called Razom for Ukraine. Freedom in Ukraine means something very, very different to all of us right now. They're fighting for their lives. And if you subscribe to the Times, or maybe you've seen it elsewhere, you see people whose lives have been shattered and they're getting around on bikes while the bombs are falling. Veselka is this amazing institution of Ukrainians who've settled here in the United States, and I just want to invite you to make a contribution, which I'm going to do right now, to Razom, which is there to support the Ukrainians who have been subject to this absolutely terrible thing of being supported up to a point in their battle for self-determination and freedom. They're freedom-loving people no less than us, and now the rug is just getting pulled out from underneath them. And I hope that you'll join me in making a contribution for them. Thank you. And leading support for Ukrainian cause here in New York City is provided not only by this organization, but by Veselka, which donates, I know, large amounts of its profits to this cause. I want to say just a word about commercial cycling. You know, the commercial cyclists are not really here in this room. There may be some, but it's a perfect storm that we have right now with a force of 60 to 80,000 delivery cyclists in New York City who we really can't handle within the existing bike infrastructure. And we didn't necessarily ask for it, but I think it's poorly understood exactly why there are so many delivery cyclists. So I just like to talk about the different elements of it. We have, since the pandemic, this rampant culture of ordering food in. I live up in Harlem, and there is, you know, I'm in basically a high-rise. It's a 17-story building. There are people who are ordering in the morning at 7 a.m. I see them as I'm going out, having things like a cup of coffee and a bagel delivered to their home when there's a diner across the street. So why is there so much commercial delivery activity? It's because everyone is ordering everything in. They think that's the way to go. So let's just remember, that's why there's so many delivery cyclists out there, because of this insatiable appetite for ordering in and convenience. You know, people who they have to go to the bathroom, they're calling Uber. That's why our streets are so crowded, right? Is because everyone wants everything delivered to them and to have themselves delivered everywhere. Another critical factor you have to understand about delivery cyclists is that it's actually a pretty good job, right? You get to bike all day. You know, you don't have some boss or obnoxious person breathing down your neck the way you do in a lot of different jobs. You have flexibility of hours. The pay can actually be pretty good. And it's a viable way to make a living in New York City. So it's not surprising that so many people are opting for it. The third thing to consider is that so many of the delivery cyclists, you know, they see the low barrier to entry. If you can get a bike and a phone, even if you just borrow it from someone, boom, you've got a job. And many of my clients have been immigrants who've come to New York City, some of them asylum seekers, who've stepped right in, and within 48 hours of arrival, they're trying to earn a living. And they have borrowed a bike and borrowed someone else's food delivery account, and they're out riding and they get hit. Okay? And for a lot of these people, even though the work is hard and dangerous, it's like coal miners at the turn of the 19th to 20th century, they can make 10 times as much money as they ever dreamed they could make back home. This is a very attractive kind of work for this immigrant delivery workforce. But the thing to consider is that they are not New Yorkers. And through generations, more than a century in New York, we've had waves of immigrants come. And they have had to learn how to navigate traffic. And there's no class. You do it on the fly. And that's what we're seeing in real time, is people trying to learn how the traffic works in New York City. They weren't at the demonstration to win a bike lane on your local street. They don't understand that the bike lane is a one-way, not a two-way bike lane. And they're trying to make a living so they can send that money back home. And that's something that we need to keep in mind, that the delivery cycling issue in New York City is not just an issue of bad actors, but it's cyclists who are trying to make a living riding the bike, and doing work that people are paying them to do. And now I come to the app companies, right, who have basically gamified an alley cat style of riding by flashing messages on screens that they know are mounted on the handlebars of the commercial cyclists. And, oh, here's your next job. Oh, go to this restaurant. Oh, pick up one here and one there, and then go and deliver these food all over the place. And it's like a gamified alley cat, except it's not just for fun. And it's not like for charity, Thanksgiving. It's like, this is how you make a living. So the app companies, what a business model, right? They're not buying the bikes. They're not paying for any harm that their delivery cyclists cause. They're not paying any of the costs of this business. By the way, they're skimming huge amounts from the restaurants. They won't even let you know where the restaurant you're ordering from is located. The last time I did it, which is not very often, I couldn't even find the brick and mortar address of the restaurants that they were offering. So people may order from across town. There are proposals out there to require deliveries to be local and not across the city or across the borough. We should be discouraging people from ordering all the way across the city and paying a delivery cyclist harried and trying to make a buck to drive that far in order to deliver an enchilada, right? It's a perfect storm, and there is legislation that's underway that is going to address this. But, you know, we need to bear in mind that there are forces other than just the delivery cyclists, and not just say these are bad actors who don't belong here. We have to look at the consumers, the app companies, and the other forces at play, and try to find a way to bring cyclists into our bike community. And at the end of the day, if they're on a motorized bike that's going faster than most of us ride and heavier than most of our bikes, they pack a lot more force in the case of an impact. And if they're coming straight at you in a Jersey barrier protected cattle chute-like bike lane, looking at their phone as they ride in your direction, something's got to be done, right? They've got to be taught. And if you follow me on Instagram, my solution to this is talk to them. You call them out and you say, don't do that. That's dangerous. You stop and you just say, you can't do that. You don't just let them go. You stop them, because this is how people learn to treat each other with courtesy and respect here in New York City, right? We don't want a cop on every corner, because those cops will be ticketing us. Because those cops don't want to just look for the dangerous conduct. They want to ticket the first 10 cyclists they can see so they can knock off for the rest of the day. That's how cops operate when they're told to go out and ticket cyclists. We have to take responsibility for this and what's going on in our bike lanes. And I know everyone can't do it equally. It falls differently on men and on women, on younger and older. Yeah, I know all of that. But remember, we're New Yorkers, and we've got to get that message across and guard ourselves in our own space, and not just say it's the cop's job to do it or deport them all. Those are not the answers. That's not how we do it in New York.